Life sure is weird. As I tell my stories to people, they tell me that I've lived an exciting life and have tons of stories that are so crazy they sound fake. Makes me feel like a good storyteller, to be honest, but I've never made any of these stories up. There are a few experiences that I've had that are so outlandish, if I hadn't been right there, I wouldn't believe it. And I got 3 more of these stories for you today. The first one happened in 2020. I was hanging out in a small town called Gold Hill. It's actually the town that I was raised in. There's not really a lot to do there besides break into old abandoned power plants and play around in the woods. One day I had a group of friends invite me out to Gold Hill to hang out by the river. I was with my friends Althea, a guy named Adam, and then another guy who went by the title White Wolf, and his girlfriend was also with us. Now, in Gold Hill, there's this river called the Rogue. It's a river people go rafting on because the current's very strong through most of it, but there are also a lot of spots where the water calms down and people can swim. Above this particular swimming hole are 2 bridges, one for the train to cross, and another for a road. And people tie ropes to these bridges and jump off into the water all the time. But for more extreme river goers, people will jump off the bridges into the water, which is technically illegal for a few different reasons. Firstly, it's not very smart to jump off these bridges. The river pulls debris like logs and tree branches down under the water, and people have smacked into this debris and knocked themselves out and drowned. It sounds silly, but due to this, you're not technically allowed to jump off these bridges, and they've even put up fences to make it more difficult for people to do so. Now, these bridges are only about 42 feet from the water, but if you climb to the top of the metal beams on the train track one, it's about 75 feet on the top, which is also not so bad. Either way, we're sitting there on the beach enjoying ourselves when we notice people around the beach are cheering towards the bridge. I look up and there are these 2 little girls on the bridge looking down, standing at the 40-foot mark. They must have been about 9 and 13, and the cheering went on for quite a while. Eventually, I yelled up at them, "Are you gonna jump?" To which the younger of the 2 looked down at me and screamed, "I'm not gonna bitch out now!" This was hysterical, but in the end, they just sat up there. Adam, White Wolf, and I decided to climb up there and help them out. If they saw us jump, maybe they wouldn't be so scared. We asked the girls if they wanted to go first, and they told us to jump instead. Adam went first. As soon as I saw him drop, I realized how far down we'd really be going. White Wolf looked at me and said, "Screw you guys for making me do this." He then proceeded to dive into the water. It was awesome, but he totally screwed me. Now, no matter what, I was going to look like a wimp. No way I was going to dive into a running river. I looked at the little girls and said, "Don't do what he just did," and I jumped in. Gravity is a wonderful thing, and I was actually really proud of myself. I don't like heights, but I didn't piss myself until I hit the water. I'd call that a successful jump. We looked at the top of the bridge and noticed the little girls were walking away. Turns out, seeing us jump didn't instill a lot of confidence, and in the end, they never did take the leap. I'd call that a good thing, but then it seems I made that jump for no reason. No, I'm just kidding, it was awesome. This next story is really out there, and I apologize for the disclaimer that I'm about to shove at you. I'm the seeing is believing type of guy. If someone told me he saw Bigfoot, I'd let him share the story, but unless I saw it too, I wouldn't have much to grab onto. I've always been this way, but I had an experience that literally happened right in front of my face, and for a couple years, I didn't believe it actually happened. I convinced myself that it wasn't real, but after telling the story to a few people, they helped me realize that I did definitely see something and shouldn't be afraid to share it. So, take this next story with a huge grain of salt, but this is one of my weirdest stories. Now, to start off, the first part of this story is one reason I didn't believe what I saw. I had gone to Ashland a couple years ago to trip with a friend of mine. She wanted to heal from some past trauma and trusted me to trip sit her. I also took mushrooms that day. I took 2 grams and we tripped all day. At around 7 o'clock p.m., I had fully come down. I had absolutely no visuals, no hallucinations, no tracers. I was completely sober, and I even drove my friend back to her home. So there I was, the sun was still shining in the sky, I had just pulled up to her apartment and I was getting stuff from the trunk of my car. She was standing right behind me. When I turned around and looked up, I actually screamed out, "What is that?" My friend turned around and saw nothing, and by the time she had turned around, the thing I saw disappeared to me as well. What I saw hanging in the sky about 20 to 30 feet away from me was a huge, silent, white floating thing. It was ginormous, and it was right there. This thing looked like some sort of flying craft. It made no noise, and I literally watched it disappear right before me. So, let me try to explain this better. I'm in the trunk of my car, I turn around, and there's this big ship, and it looked as though half of it was already invisible. I watched the rest of it turn invisible and fly away slowly from us, but it was so close, and it seriously shocked me. My friend kept asking me what it was that I saw, and I just kept saying, no, I don't know. I think it's just the mushrooms playing tricks on me. She looked at me and asked, are you still tripping? No, I replied. Finally, she got me to tell her what I saw, and she said, Barry, I don't think that was the mushrooms. You genuinely sound like you saw something, and I think they wanted you to see them. Now, I wrote all this off. I don't know what I saw, and it cloaked so quickly that I just made excuses. The sun probably got in my eyes, and the mushrooms must have still been active enough to cause a moving picture to appear, and then my brain realized it wasn't there and made it disappear. But I've never had a hallucination like that before, if I'm being honest. It was right in front of me. Either way, that's not the end of the story. After this happened, I never told anyone, other than my friend who was with me. I knew the second I said that I'd been tripping, it would inevitably invalidate the entire experience. And even I didn't believe what I'd seen. I chalked it down to a weird mind trick and I left it at that. Within the same month though, something really weird happened to me, and once I connected the two, it freaked me out a little bit. It was about 4 a.m. and I'd been asleep. I had this really strange nightmare, which for me is rare. I don't tend to get nightmares almost ever. The dream started in my bathroom. I was talking with a female friend of mine. She was sitting on the countertop and I went in for a hug. She pulled her face away as though she thought that I was leaning in for a kiss. I moved back and said, whoa, hey, don't worry, I was just gonna hug you. She turned towards me and gave me a hug, but when I moved back, I was face to face with myself. The scene jumped to myself, my clone, and a different male friend of mine all talking in the kitchen. When I'm teleported to a house that I'd never seen before. It was gorgeous. It was as though it was an old mansion with brand new interior. It seemed like I was alone, and I was walking through this mansion, looking at everything inside. All of a sudden, I flashed somewhere else. I'm driving down a windy road at night in my van, and I thought to myself, oh crap, I have to pay attention. I'm driving here. I can't be falling asleep like that. All of a sudden, bam, I flash back to the mansion. I'm looking through the rooms, the beds were all neatly made. Each room had a new vibrant color. I walked into a bedroom and all of a sudden I'm flashed back to my van and I almost rear-end a blue car right in front of me. It's still nighttime and I slam on my brakes. I thought to myself, I have to stay awake. I have to pay attention or I'm going to get into an accident. All of a sudden I'm back in the mansion one last time. I walk by a staircase when my vision gets blurry. TV static fills my sight and I can't breathe. What was even stranger was I felt this vibration all through my body. It was a piercing buzzing noise that filled my ears but rang through my physical senses. Almost as though something was trying to rip me apart one particle at a time. I remember suffocating in the dream. Each breath of air was harder and harder to take in, and I remember in my last breaths I was calling for my brother. I don't even think he was in the mansion, but I was begging for someone to save me. All of a sudden, I'm jolted from the dream and I'm awake. I'm in my bed, but the buzzing is still going. It was so loud that it was hard to even think. I was shouting at myself in my head. Is this real? Is this still the dream? The buzzing noise still filled my body. It was a very intense feeling that I'd never felt before, and I was looking around the room. I wondered if maybe I was suffering from sleep paralysis, but I could move freely. That was the weird part. Alongside the buzzing vibration noise, there was another noise. It sounded mechanical yet organic at the same time. Something like it almost felt like there was something or multiple somethings in the room with me, but as I looked around, there was nothing there. I kept thinking to myself, this is so loud. There's no way I'm the only one hearing this. I wondered when it was going to stop. I don't even know how long it went on for, but all of a sudden, it was gone. And it wasn't like I realized it was fading away or I knew it was gone the second it stopped. I just realized the sound had stopped. The buzzing and the mechanical noise had stopped, and I didn't even know how long it had been since it ended. It was like it never happened in the first place, and it took me a while to get back to sleep that night. The next day, I asked my family if they'd heard that noise. It was the loudest thing I'd ever heard in the area. Imagine standing near a jet. That's how loud it was. I knew I couldn't have been the only one who had heard it. I mean, the neighborhood must have been woken up by this, but everyone I asked said they heard nothing. I even asked the neighbors. They said the night was completely quiet for them. I just assumed it was a weird dream that lingered when I woke up, but the more I think about it, the more it makes me wonder. These two events happened only a couple weeks from each other. It could be that the mushrooms made me see something that wasn't there even though I'd completely come down. It could be that this dream followed me into my waking life. And to be as grounded as possible, that's the best explanation I have. But it was freaky, and I toy around with the idea that I did really see something, and whatever it was, haunted me in my dream for some reason. This last story isn't as crazy as that one. This happened when I was living in Vietnam. My girlfriend Alia had taught me how to ride the motorbike when I was out there. The first time I was in Vietnam, my buddy Jake tried to teach me, and I got about 10 feet before I crashed and scraped both of us up pretty good. Luckily, I never fell when I was riding with Alia, but there was a point when my brother came to visit, and I decided that I'd need to show him how to ride the motorbike as well, so that if we went somewhere as a group, he could make it on his own bike. There I am in the middle of a Vietnamese alley. Down the street are some little dogs playing with each other, kids running around after school, and at the very end of the alley was a group of old Vietnamese ladies who sat around every day and chatted with each other. I would always wave to them as I passed by. Either way, I'm getting Dev ready to ride the bike. I told him, this is your throttle, these are your brakes, and it's an automatic so you don't even need to shift. Just crank the throttle and you'll go. Hit the brakes to stop. My brother gets on the bike, pulls the throttle way too hard, and flies down the alley towards these old ladies. I had never seen a group of women run this fast. One of them picked up her chair and sped into her house in a flash. Luckily, David never actually reached them before he finally regained control and grabbed the brakes. To my recollection, he knocked the bike over and jumped off. He was pissed. I couldn't help but laugh, and I apologized profusely to the old Vietnamese ladies. Like I said, life sure is weird, but there are some things we collect that are very valuable to us. For some, it's wealth. Others, it's power and respect. For me, it's experiences and novelty. There are some things that have happened to me that even take me a bit of time to process and understand. But I'm so glad to have the experience because no matter what, it can't be taken from me. If any aliens out there are receiving this, can you pick me up next time? Don't kidnap me forever, but take me off the planet for a minute? Now that would be a hell of an adventure.